Did you know that you do not have to give up bread, rice, or fruit to bring your blood sugar back under control? I know that sounds backwards because almost everyone has been told the same thing, that the only way to fix high sugar is to cut out the carbohydrates and live on chicken and salad for the rest of your life. But that is not how it actually works inside your body, and it is not what I tell my own patients. The truth is that the fastest way to lower your blood sugar is not about taking foods away. It is about adding the right foods in. The foods that quietly do the work your medication has been trying to do for years. And I have watched this happen with my own eyes. I have hundreds of patients who turned their numbers around in a matter of days, not by starving themselves, but by adding a small handful of specific foods to the meals they were already eating. And it was not a temporary dip either. These are people who have kept their sugars low, many of them without medication, for months and in some cases for years. So in this video, I am going to walk you through exactly how to use each of these 10 foods to optimize your biochemistry, reverse insulin resistance at the cellular level, and bring your numbers down quickly, naturally, and most importantly, in a way that actually lasts. Before I get into the very first food, do me one quick favor. If you want more videos that explain the why behind your own body, instead of just handing you another pill and rushing you out the door, then hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and leave me a comment telling me what your morning fasting number was this week. I genuinely read them. The ages and the numbers in this audience shape what I decide to cover next. So go ahead and do that, and then let us get into it. Here is what almost no one takes the time to explain to you in a rushed 12-minute office visit. High blood sugar almost always begins upstream with a hormone called insulin. Insulin is the hormone that unlocks your cells so that glucose, which is the sugar floating in your blood, can move out of your bloodstream and get inside the cell, where it actually belongs and where it gets burned for energy. Now, when you have spent years riding the blood sugar roller coaster, up and down, your cells slowly stop answering the door. The insulin knocks and knocks, but the cell stays shut tight. That is what we call insulin resistance. Your pancreas, trying to be helpful, pumps out more and more insulin to force the issue. Your blood sugar climbs anyway, and then the standard answer you are handed is a prescription that pushes even more insulin into a body that is already drowning in it. The system tends to make money when you stay sick, not when you actually get well. That is simple economics, not malice. There is no revenue and no time in a short appointment to teach you how the food on your plate talks directly to your insulin receptors. So that is exactly what I am going to do right now. My name is Dr. Henry Morgan, and every single one of these 10 foods does one of 3 jobs. It either slows the sugar coming into your blood, it cools the inflammation that keeps your cells deaf to insulin, or it wakes the insulin receptor back up, so that your own body starts doing the work it was always designed to do. You do not have to add all 10 of them tomorrow. Add them in gradually over the next couple of weeks and let them stack on top of one another. Let me show you the first one. The first food is fenugreek seeds. These are small, hard, amber-colored seeds, and you can find them in the spice aisle of almost any grocery store for just a couple of dollars. If you skip over this one simply because the name sounds exotic and unfamiliar, you are walking right past one of the most powerful blood sugar tools sitting on that shelf, and it costs you less than your morning coffee. Here is what fenugreek actually does inside you. The seed is packed with a soluble fiber called galactomannan. When that fiber meets the water in your stomach, it swells up into a thick gel, and that gel physically slows down how fast your stomach empties carbohydrates into your small intestine. Slower emptying means the sugar trickles into your blood instead of flooding it all at once. No flood means no giant spike, and no giant spike means no panic dump of insulin from your pancreas. On top of all that, fenugreek carries an amino acid that gently nudges your pancreas to release its insulin more efficiently and helps your muscle cells take up the glucose. In my own practice, I have watched fasting numbers come down within a week or 2 on this alone. To use it, take 1 teaspoon of the whole seeds and soak them in a glass of water overnight. In the morning, drink the water and eat the softened seeds before your breakfast. If that slightly bitter taste is too much for you, grind them down and stir half a teaspoon into your yogurt or sprinkle it over your eggs. Start low because this fiber is strong, and your gut needs a few days to adjust to it comfortably. Number 2 is cinnamon, and you almost certainly already have it sitting in your cupboard. But the kind you have matters a great deal, and most people grab exactly the wrong one. The common grocery store cinnamon is cassia, and it carries a compound called coumarin that is genuinely hard on the liver in large daily doses. The one you actually want is Ceylon cinnamon, sometimes labeled as true cinnamon. It is milder, it is far safer to take every single day, and it is the one I tell my own patients to go out and buy. What makes cinnamon work is a group of polyphenols. Those are natural plant compounds that behave almost like insulin themselves. They help your insulin receptors grip onto glucose more tightly, and they slow your stomach from emptying too fast after a meal. The effect is real, and it is measurable. Research out of the Human Nutrition Program at the USDA found that under half a teaspoon a day meaningfully lowered fasting glucose in adults living with type 2 diabetes. If you skip this one, you are leaving an easy win sitting right there in your spice rack. Use about a quarter to a half teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon a day, stirred into your oatmeal, your coffee, or your smoothie. The trick is to pair it with a carbohydrate meal, because that is exactly the moment you want those receptors gripping harder and your stomach slowing down. Third on the list is broccoli sprouts, and I want you to pay close attention here, because this one is the single most underused food in this entire video. I do not mean full mature broccoli, I mean the little 3-day-old sprouts. Ignore that distinction and you miss almost all of the benefit. Broccoli sprouts are absolutely loaded with a compound called sulforaphane, and the sprouts contain somewhere between 50 and 100 times more of it than a head of grown broccoli does. Sulforaphane does something that none of the other foods on this list do quite as directly. It travels to your liver and quiets down the overnight glucose factory. Your liver makes sugar while you sleep, and in a state of insulin resistance, it makes far too much of it. That is the reason so many of you wake up with a high fasting number that you simply cannot explain. A 2017 study from Lund University in Sweden gave concentrated sulforaphane to people with type 2 diabetes and brought their fasting blood sugar down measurably, with the strongest effect showing up in exactly the people whose sugar had been the hardest to control. You can grow broccoli sprouts on your own kitchen counter in a jar for pennies, or you can buy them in the produce section. A small handful, about a quarter cup, on a salad or a sandwich most days is plenty. Do not cook them hard, because high heat destroys the active compound. Eat them raw or just barely wilted. So far, every food has done the same quiet work, slowing the sugar down or waking the receptor back up, and we are only 3 foods in. The next 4 are the ones that quietly change the meals you are already sitting down to eat. If a friend or someone in your family is fighting their own numbers right now, go ahead and send them this video, because this is the kind of thing nobody ever sat them down and properly explained. Anyway, number 4 is the avocado. Most people think of it as a fat to avoid because of the calories, and that fear is genuinely costing them their health. The fat inside an avocado is monounsaturated fat, the very same family as olive oil, and it is one of the most blood sugar-friendly things you can possibly put on a plate. The reason is simple. That healthy fat and the fiber packed inside an avocado slow your entire meal down. When you add half an avocado to a plate of rice or a piece of toast, you are not removing the carbohydrate at all. You are simply putting a brake on how fast it turns into blood sugar. The glucose then climbs gently instead of spiking. Over time, monounsaturated fat has also been shown to improve insulin sensitivity, meaning your cells answer that insulin knock just a little faster. In my experience, this is the easiest food on the entire list to turn into a real habit, because it makes the meal more filling, and you stop reaching for a snack an hour later. Half an avocado a day is a sensible amount. Put it on your eggs in the morning, mash it onto whole grain toast, or add it to a salad that already has a starch in it. Anywhere you have a carbohydrate, an avocado softens the blow. Fifth is chia seeds. These are tiny gray and black seeds, and they punch far above their size. If you have ever watched chia sit in liquid and slowly turn into a pudding, then you have already seen exactly how it works inside your gut. Chia is one of the richest sources of soluble fiber you can buy anywhere. When it meets the water in your stomach, it forms that very same thick gel we just talked about with the fenugreek. And that gel wraps itself around the carbohydrates in your meal and slows their absorption right down to a crawl. The sugar releases slowly and steadily, so you avoid the spike and the crash that leaves you shaky and hungry an hour later. Chia also carries a plant-based omega-3 fat that helps calm the low-grade inflammation sitting underneath insulin resistance. Cool that inflammation down, and the cells slowly start listening to insulin again. 1 to 2 tablespoons a day does the job nicely. Stir it into your yogurt, drop it into a glass of water with a squeeze of lemon, or blend it into a smoothie. Give it about 10 minutes to gel before you drink it, and drink plenty of water alongside it, because all of that fiber needs liquid to move through you properly. Number 6 is fatty fish, and I specifically mean salmon and mackerel. This one does not work by slowing your meal down. It works on the deeper problem, the actual reason your cells went deaf to insulin in the first place. Insulin resistance is driven in large part by chronic inflammation. When your body is quietly inflamed year after year, that inflammation physically interferes with the insulin signal right at the surface of the cell. Salmon and mackerel are loaded with two omega-3 fats, EPA and DHA, and these are among the most powerful natural anti-inflammatory compounds we know of. They lower the inflammatory signals, the cell membrane gets healthier, and the insulin receptor starts working the way it is supposed to. In my 15 years of practice, the patients who eat fatty fish twice a week consistently have calmer, more stable numbers, and better blood pressure to go along with them. Aim for 2 servings a week, each about the size of your own palm. Wild salmon, mackerel, sardines, and herring are all excellent choices. Bake it, grill it, or buy it canned if that is easier on your budget. Canned mackerel and sardines are some of the cheapest, most powerful foods in this entire video. 7th on the list is walnuts. Of all the nuts, this is the one I point my patients toward first because of what it does for the lining of your blood vessels and for your insulin at the very same time. Walnuts are rich in polyunsaturated fat, and that same plant omega-3 we found in chia. That fat improves the function of your endothelium, which is the thin lining inside your blood vessels, and that lining is one of the very first things high blood sugar damages. At the same time, the fat, fiber, and protein in walnuts blunt the rise in blood sugar after a meal, and they have been shown to lower fasting insulin, which is the number underneath your blood sugar that quietly tells you how hard your pancreas is straining. Eat a small handful as a snack instead of crackers or a cookie, and you have taken what would have been a sugar spike and turned it into a flat line. A small handful is about a quarter cup, or 7 to 10 whole walnuts. Keep them raw or dry roasted, never the candied or honey-coated kind. Use them to replace a processed snack, not to pile on top of one. Number 8 is eggs, whole eggs, with the yolk included. For years, people were told that the yolk was the enemy, and that bad piece of advice pushed folks straight toward sugary breakfast cereals that were far, far worse for their blood sugar. So let me set that record straight. A whole egg is almost pure protein and fat with virtually no carbohydrate, which means that on its own, it barely moves your blood sugar at all. But the real magic is what we doctors call the second meal effect. When you start your day with eggs instead of toast or cereal, you steady your blood sugar not just at breakfast, but all the way through to lunch. You walk into your next meal with calmer numbers and a smaller spike. The protein and fat also keep you genuinely full, so those mid-morning cravings that normally send you toward the cookie jar quietly disappear. In my practice, swapping a cereal breakfast for 2 or 3 eggs is one of the single fastest changes I ever see show up on a morning glucose reading. 2 or 3 whole eggs in the morning is a solid target for most people. Scramble them, boil a batch ahead for the week, or fold in some spinach. Put that avocado from earlier right on top, and you have built yourself a near-perfect blood sugar breakfast. Number 9 is apple cider vinegar, and this is the one with the fastest visible effect on a glucose meter of anything on this entire list. If you have a meter at home, you can actually watch this one work tonight. The active ingredient is acetic acid, and it does 2 things at once. It slows your stomach from emptying, so the carbohydrates in your meal arrive in your bloodstream gradually, and it helps your muscles pull glucose out of your blood and burn it for fuel. The research here is strong. Work led by Dr. Carol Johnston at Arizona State University found that a single tablespoon of vinegar taken before a carbohydrate meal lowered the after-meal blood sugar spike by roughly 20% in people with insulin resistance. That is a drug-sized effect from something that cost you just a few dollars a bottle. Take 1 tablespoon, and this part matters, dilute it in a full glass of water 10 to 15 minutes before a meal that has carbohydrates in it. Always dilute it and never drink it straight because the acid is hard on your tooth enamel and your throat. And if you already take any medication for your blood sugar, talk to your doctor first, because vinegar plus that medication can push your sugar down faster than you might expect. The 10th food is lentils, and this one proves the entire point of this video. Lentils are a carbohydrate, and yet they will lower your blood sugar. Here is how that works. Lentils are built from a slow carbohydrate called resistant starch, wrapped up in soluble fiber and a healthy dose of plant protein. That combination means the glucose inside the lentil is released into your blood slowly and steadily over hours, instead of all at once. They actually carry that second meal effect too. So a bowl of lentil soup at lunch gives you steadier sugar right into the evening. Clinically, swapping white rice or white potato for lentils a few times a week is one of the most reliable ways I know to bring down an A1C, which is your 3-month average blood sugar. Aim for half a cup to a cup of cooked lentils a few times a week. Use them in a soup, a stew, or a cold salad with some olive oil and a splash of that vinegar we just covered. They are filling, they are cheap, and they stretch a meal further than almost anything else you can buy. Now let me tell you about someone I will simply call Donna. She was 63 years old, recently retired, and she came to me genuinely frightened because her fasting sugar was sitting around 180, and her own doctor had just told her it was time to add a second medication. She did not want to spend the rest of her life climbing that medication ladder, and she was scared of where this was all heading because she had watched her own mother lose toes and then her eyesight to this very same disease. We did not cut her carbohydrates down to nothing. We added eggs and avocado in the morning instead of cereal, a tablespoon of vinegar before her bigger meals, lentils swapped in for the white rice, walnuts instead of the afternoon cookie, fatty fish twice a week, cinnamon in her coffee, and broccoli sprouts on her sandwich at lunch. Within the very first week, her fasting numbers started dropping. Within 3 months, working right alongside her own doctor, she had come down off that second medication entirely, and her A1C had moved from the diabetic range back toward normal. 2 years later, it is held there. She did not starve herself. She ate more food, just the right food, and her own body did the rest of the work. So let me tie all 10 of these together, because this is the real reason they work when cutting carbs alone so often fails. Every single one of these foods is quietly handing your insulin its job back, and doing it without starving you. The fiber foods slow the glucose down so your pancreas never has to panic. The fish, the walnuts, and the chia cool the inflammation that was jamming the signal. The cinnamon and the vinegar walk right up to the insulin receptor and help it grip again. Do that meal after meal, day after day, and the cell that stopped answering the door slowly starts opening it on the very first knock again. That is precisely what reversing insulin resistance means at the cellular level. And once it happens, your body holds your sugar down on its own, which is exactly why Donna's numbers stayed low for 2 full years. Before I give you tonight's plan, I need to draw one very clear line for you. If you are currently on insulin or on a sulfonylurea, which is one of the older blood sugar pills, then these foods can lower your sugar fast enough that your medication dose may suddenly become too high, and that can drop you into a dangerous low. So add these foods in with your doctor watching your numbers and let them walk your medication dose down as your body steadily improves. Do not stop any prescription on your own. Bring this list to your next appointment instead and go through it together. So here is exactly what to do tonight. 5 simple steps. 1. Tomorrow morning, replace your cereal or your toast with 2 or 3 whole eggs and half an avocado. That single swap changes your blood sugar for the entire day. 2. Tonight, soak a teaspoon of fenugreek seeds in a glass of water and drink it first thing in the morning. 3. Buy Ceylon cinnamon, not cassia, and start with a 1/4 teaspoon a day in your coffee or your oatmeal. 4. Before your biggest carbohydrate meal tomorrow, take 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in a full glass of water, 15 minutes ahead. 5. This week, swap white rice or white potato for lentils at least twice, and put fatty fish on the menu for 2 nights. Stack these in gradually over the next 2 weeks. You are not removing the foods you love. You are simply adding the foods that protect you. Now, everything we did today brings your sugar down during the day and after your meals. But a huge number of you have told me the exact same strange thing, that your highest reading of the entire day is the very first one in the morning, before you have eaten a single bite of food. You fasted all night long and your sugar climbed anyway. There is a specific reason your liver does that while you sleep, and there is a clear way to shut it down. I made an entire video that explains exactly what is happening overnight and how to wake up to a lower number on that meter. I will put it right here on the screen for you. Go and watch that one next, and I will see you over there. Dr. Henry Morgan.